There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Your Mountain Podcast. I'm your host, David Wilms, stuck in my home for week number 5 of this COVID-19 outbreak. And I am looking at my computer screen. I'm doing Zoom just like everybody else in America is. I'm staring across the interwebs at
Time and
one
space.
Nephi Cole.
Time and space.
Time and space, yeah. And Mike McGrady.
Hey, what's up?
Not much.
If you
literally
Dave,
not much.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I wore pants today, so that's a good thing.
Dave, you gotta be loving this, right? I mean, think about this. You have this is like Dave Wilms. This is your nirvana. You have everything you need. You have food, water, 800 rolls of toilet paper, no restaurants, so you don't have to pay for any food. Nobody that you're not immediately related to in your house. On the last day, somebody gives you $1,200.
Yeah, most of that is my nirvana. I would take more than $1,200 though. I would definitely take more. Well, I'll take whatever anybody wants to give me.
Yeah,
for sure. We're on week 5 now, and I think
don't even know
going
what
into
day
week
it
5.
is.
Well, I was about to say I'm just thankful we're doing this podcast together because we release it every Tuesday, and if we didn't do that, I don't think I would know what day it is.
the thing tethering you to life.
That's it.
I know what's going on. It's Tuesday.
That's it. It's Tuesday, and that means it's your mountain day. And I hope that for everybody listening to this, that's your barometer too, or that's your compass.
Yeah.
Like you know, all right, I look at my phone when I wake up in the morning. It says a new episode of the Your Mountain Podcast has been downloaded. It's Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I better wear pants.
Yeah, that's how you figured out what day it was, like the podcast.
If that's not your thing, then you should subscribe.
You should. And we haven't said this in a while, so I'm going to say it now.
5 stars.
You should subscribe. 5 stars, preferably when you rate us, because you should do that too. Go ahead, Nephi.
I was gonna think about how lucky everyone is that you get to binge listen to all these podcasts. I mean, this is like the perfect confluence of events. You have almost 100 of our podcasts to listen to, and all the time you could ever dream of to do it.
There's never a better time than the present, and there's never a better time than the present to recruit more listeners to the Your Mountain Podcast, right? So it's fantastic when you rate us. We appreciate it. Appreciate that when you subscribe. Get out there, tell your friends. Hopefully we're share worthy. I'm thinking of the toilet paper stuff. Remember that Seinfeld episode with Elaine in the stall? Do you have a square to spare?
That's right.
The toilet paper hoarding episode.
Yeah.
And I'm here like, do you have a share to spare? Come on, share our podcast, right?
That was
Do
not
you have
good.
a shared? I didn't.
I mean, there have been some bad jokes thrown around before we hit record on this podcast, but that's the worst one yet.
Yeah. Well, all right.
I don't know if it was that bad. You have a share to spare? That can't be that bad.
You mean a square to spare?
No, a share. I want people to share it.
Oh, I see.
Okay. All right. Anyways.
Whatever. Anyway, share the podcast. Help us grow during this difficult time for everybody. And the other thing, before we get into our main topic today, which is really, our main topic is going to be talking about the things that are still going on out there, the decisions that are still being made at the federal and state levels that are affecting your land, water, and wildlife while we're all social distanced and locked away in our homes. Mm-hmm. Before we get to that, as we're going into week 1 billion of this, and in what has to be, what I saw a meme.
That's an exaggeration, Dave.
I don't know. I really don't know that it is. I'm on day infinity of the same shirt. But and John Zinnel will love it because I'm wearing my
Pittman Robertson shirt. Oh,
I thought you were going to continue to wear your Bush Tour 1996. Is that on underneath?
It's on
there
right
we go.
Yeah, buddy. I've got the Bush 1996 the band tour under my Pittman Robertson shirt. That's all I'm wearing for the rest of this thing. But I wanted to ask you guys, as we're going through all this and we're starting to go slightly insane, and it's starting to make Jack Nicholson look semi-normal in The Shining. We're starting to understand what he was going through, and it's like it wasn't all that odd, right?
Yeah, right. All work, no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem out of the question that I might go through that kind of a breakdown here shortly. But I find myself every day daydreaming about what I'm going to be doing when we can start doing things again. So I wanted to ask you guys before we get started, what is it that you are looking forward to doing most once these stay-at-home orders and these social distancing directives are lifted?
So March for me was supposed to be the month that I'd go and buy a raft. And so I was looking forward to April, getting on the water and testing it out and making sure everything's operational and getting the oars figured out and everything. And so I can't wait to get out and get that done. I just got to now figure out if my new puppy can float. We'll see.
It's a beagle, right?
Yeah, it's a beagle.
Nope.
We'll get a life vest. We'll get a life vest or something for that thing. It's going to be a bow wow.
It'll be noisy while it's
on the bow of the boat, and it's going to go bow wow. Nephi, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you doing?
I don't even know. I think I'll probably, I enjoy long walks on the beach and I don't know.
Plinking.
No, I actually miss, this will maybe seem silly. Like I miss going, shocker. I miss going to the range. Now you can still go to the range, but I just kind of like, I enjoy going and talking to people and meeting with the different companies and businesses and individuals who work in, my industry and kind of spending time with those folks. And just, that's what I do that's what I do. I meet people, I shake hands and I talk. And so it's kind of unique and different here to be, not like we don't always work from the offices, but not having the ability to get out and interact with people and share, lunch and stories and everything. And this is kind of, maybe everybody's not going to identify with this, but you guys will, because we spent, I've spent the last 10 years of my career, I trade in relationships. And so when you're no longer doing that, or when it's shifting significantly and you're socially distancing from people and you're keeping your relationships up with, emails and phone calls, that's just different than being able to, get out and visit with people. It's just different. So
yeah, I'm an introvert. It's fine. I'm an introvert. It's fine. I should check on you because you're an extrovert. Make sure you're doing okay.
Yeah, it's tough. My dog's tired of me now because we have a lot of great conversations though.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So from my end, around this time of year is, I love to fish year round. I don't do a ton of ice fishing, but when the ice comes off, I love to fish. But one of my favorite things to do, and what I view as the kickoff to the summer fishing season for me, is going on a fishing trip with my dad every year. And I don't own a boat because I've always been of the mindset that there are only two good days when you own a boat, the day you buy it and the day you sell it. But it's really great to know somebody that owns a boat. My dad's that guy, who's always had a boat. And I'm not a big lake fisherman. I love fly fishing and high mountain streams and so forth, but I just miss, I'm so looking forward to taking that first trip on the boat with my dad fishing this summer, whenever that comes. That's what I'm looking forward to. Can't beat it. And he's just one that, even though we live in the same town, I haven't seen him, because I don't want to risk being a transmitter for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and since you don't wash your clothes ever, You know, you've been wearing the same shirt for the last 6 months. It's probably better.
Wears
to
them in
just
the
keep your
shower.
distance.
It gets washed every 6-7 days when I take a shower.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
All right, but that's not what anybody wants to hear about. I was interested in hearing what you guys were thinking on this because it crosses my mind all the time. But that's not what this podcast is really all about. It sort of is. But we're really talking about the policy, you know, what's going on with your lands, water, and wildlife. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people that are starting to realize that that this COVID-19 outbreak, pandemic, is having a fairly significant impact on their ability to get outside and do what they want to do this time of year. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. But I think maybe people don't realize that, you know, government is still operational at the federal level and at the state levels. And those agencies are still making decisions, and they're still doing things that are impacting both positively and negatively, impacting your ability to hunt, fish, get out and enjoy parts of the outdoors. And we wanted to touch on some of those things that have happened just within the past week or two, during this time where everybody's working from home, or unfortunately for many not being able to work at all. There's a lot of decisions going on right now. So we want to touch on a handful of them. Yeah. So I'm going to start with maybe here's what I'll do. I've got about 5 listed. You guys know the 5 I've got listed. I want to start with what I think is a pretty exciting one. And I think that it has a real strong tie-in with hunting and fishing in particular, especially because the whole purpose is to expand hunting and fishing opportunities. So last week, I think it was April 8th, the Secretary of the Interior issued a press release, and to expand, the purpose of the press release was to announce that they were proposing expanding hunting and fishing opportunities on national wildlife refuges and actually some national fish hatcheries. I want to give just a little context to that and then open this thing up for the three of us to discuss a little bit. So let me give you just a little bit of a background. So the National Wildlife Refuge System Administration Act of 1966 is the act that really matters. That sets the stage for why Interior just did what they did. So this National Wildlife Refuge System Administration Act of 1990 or 1966, what it does is it closed all national wildlife refuges in all the states except Alaska to all hunting. Well, actually not just hunting, but to any use, including hunting and fishing. It closed it until the Secretary of the Interior opened it for other purposes. So the idea was these are refuges. They're for wildlife by the name. They're supposed to be places of refuse and refuge for wildlife, to get away from it, to have some protection, right? That was the general idea. And so all other uses were banned unless specifically authorized. The Secretary could authorize them only upon a determination that that use is compatible with the purpose of the refuge and the system mission, and has to be in accordance with all the laws of the areas, and they have to coordinate with states and other agencies for, you know, sound fish and wildlife management. So that's the background of this. Every year from 1966 on, every year, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service the Secretary of Interior through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service looks at all of these refuges and decides what's appropriate and proposes regulations to say, okay, here's what you can and can't do on refuges. There have historically been quite a few refuges in the country that allow hunting or fishing of some kind. Some species are allowed some places, others are not allowed other places. It sets bag limits, all sorts of things, working with the state agencies. So what this did is it went through and added, it's proposing 2.3 million acres of hunting and fishing opportunities, 97 national wildlife refuges, and 9 fish hatcheries. Now, that's not saying that those same 97, that all of them, you couldn't hunt on all of them the prior year.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Is that new or is that just existing? Because there's 545 national wildlife refuges and 95 million acres in the system. So it's still a relatively small number, but so I wasn't sure if it was an addition or just the existing one. So sorry, go ahead.
Right. So what I'm trying to pull up, I had it. Of course, just when you have it, you lose it, right?
Yeah, right.
So I was trying to, and I'll find it here in a minute, but it was, there are here's what it does. The number of units in the National Wildlife Refuge System where the public can hunt now is 399. So what was that? Or the proposal would be 399. What did you say the total was, Mike?
Of refuges?
Yeah.
There was 545.
Okay. So of those 545, 399 of them you'd be allowed to hunt in now if this proposal goes through, and 331 you'd be able to fish in.
Okay.
That's a pretty big deal. That's, so it's last year, let me break it down a little bit more. So this proposed rule would create nearly 900 new distinct hunting and fishing opportunities. Each opportunity is being defined as one species on one refuge in one state. Like, so there could be multiple species on one refuge would be multiple opportunities. So 900 new opportunities on top of last year's expansion of 1.4 million acres. So this is a new 2.3 million acres, an additional 2.3 million acres on top of last year's 1.4. So in the past couple of years, we'd be looking at almost 4 million new acres of opportunity for hunting and fishing in the refuge system. Right? And the proposal, like I said at the beginning, the only way that this can be authorized is if it's consistent with the purposes of the refuge in the first place. So you can't do it if it's inconsistent or if it's going to, if it's counter to the mission of the agency, the refuge system, that sort of thing. So the determination by the agency is we should be providing these opportunities because it's consistent with the purposes of the act to begin with.
No, it's cool. It's neat that they're doing that.
Many, as we know, many federal lands have management plans sort of set up that they define all the various uses and things that can occur. And whereas with these specific lands that are really geared towards wildlife as a single resource, there still are comprehensive plans for conservation of those species in those areas. So whatever it is has to be still in line with that overarching conservation plan.
Well, and so pop quiz for you too, before we move on to the next topic. Here's just a quick one question quiz. What is a principal revenue source for the National Wildlife Refuge System?
I don't know. Duck stamp?
Ding, ding, ding. Mr. McGrady.
Oh, Mike.
Yeah.
They didn't beat it out of you at the Attorney General's office. You've still got it.
Yeah, I still got it. Well, the first time I went to buy one, I was like, why do I have to have one of these? What is this? But I'm not going to a refuge.
So you buy a duck stamp, a federal duck stamp, and you're required to buy that for purposes of waterfowl hunting anywhere in the United States. But what also comes with that is that's your access permit to get into any wildlife refuge in the country. And it's the revenue generated from those duck stamps that's used to acquire the land and do habitat improvements and so forth for our wildlife refuge system. Yep. Right? And I remember looking this up at one point, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that the lion's share of the federal duck stamps that are purchased by hunters, right? They're purchased by hunters, and so it's really hunters that are funding this, and it's it kind of creates this symbiotic relationship with the North American model, right? It's hunters that are funding it, and now there's being this opportunity given back to hunters to to go onto those refuges that they helped pay for to protect those species, to give these places for these species to thrive, and they're being afforded an opportunity to continue to hunt. I think it's a cool story.
It's super cool. I would like to take this moment as I think about this to congratulate you, Mike, because we don't talk about what people do on our podcast, but we can talk about what you used to do. And now that you're no longer Deputy Attorney General in Wyoming, now you can maybe actually get to go hunt ducks sometime. So you'll actually have some spare time. You'll get to actually go use your duck stamp.
So you think it was time that was the problem? Yeah, that's okay.
Well, right. There's opportunity too. I was like, I had a duck stamp once. I was going to go use it, but I couldn't ever get anybody to take me goose hunting.
No, and that might not change the more you bring it up. But and actually, I'm not going to tell you that now. I'll save it for another time because we're talking about Mike right now, and I'm hoping that now Mike can loosen his tie a little bit or take it off altogether, maybe never wear one again, and
I have
really jump in with both feet into this podcast and do what Nephi and I do and say some things that you might regret someday.
Yeah, something your boss will be upset about. Just remember, this is not affiliated with our day jobs.
That's a fact.
No kidding.
Everything dumb that we say on this, we're personally responsible for, not professionally.
Yeah. So I have not worn a tie for like a month now. And
you
it is
still
weird.
shave. What's going on?
Yeah, I did grow out the beard. I had the quarantine beard
I know,
going.
we talked about it last time. I'm gonna send you
I shaved it. It wasn't gonna work.
Oh well.
I think I've got things growing in my beard.
Yeah.
It's getting
There's a sunflower seed in there somewhere.
It's getting a little unruly.
I can
even
see
for me.
one. I can see one.
Wouldn't surprise me.
That's the problem with Zoom meetings is like, it's pretty disturbing. I'd prefer that we didn't have. I'm going to turn the video off on yours because I'm.
You can see my.
Oh my god!
You can see my spit cup, right? There's my spit cup.
I'm not supposed to curse.
Seeds.
We're not supposed to curse on this podcast, but the fact that you just held up probably like a 200-ounce mug that's full of spit.
No, you know what this is?
Sunflower seed. I know exactly what that is.
What year is that cup?
It's a Taco Bell cup, right?
Yeah, it's a Taco Bell cup.
That you had the entire time, for at least
3
5
years
years while you were at Governor Meade's office. You had that cup.
Not this exact one, because this one, the copyright on the side is 2017. So I've had it for a while, but not the entire time.
Taco Bell cup to Taco Bell cup.
Yeah, once it gets, that's.
I'm pretty disappointed you didn't keep the original.
Yeah, you were probably one of the ones that encouraged me to get rid of it, or maybe the governor did. He might have threatened to fire me if I didn't get rid of the last one I had. So okay. Speaking of what we do or don't do, before we get into the next thing, Nephi. Yeah. I know we don't talk about what you do for a living on this podcast. Everybody can kind of infer, right? Based on what you talk about. But I'm guessing
I help people with problems.
You were just on somebody else's podcast recently, right?
I was. I got a chance to go on the Vortex Nation podcast. That was kind of fun. So those are neat people, and they're folks that I've worked with, previously, and you get a chance to see them a lot. They're part of the industry that I work in. So it's kind of a neat group of guys and neat story. If anybody that doesn't know the story about Vortex and where they came from, they're just a great company, really family owned and run company. Look at the Hamilton family, and they're just people who cared about providing value and they care about good optics. And there's a lot of neat people that work there. They're in Wisconsin. They're growing like crazy and neat company. So I'm unabashedly say that I'm a big fan of what they're doing over there, and I really appreciate that the fact that they do more than just sell optics. They also really care about the community. They care about wildlife issues. They care about people and habitat issues and sportsmen in general. Just a neat group of people. So yeah, go check out that the Vortex Nation podcast, and if you want to listen to some stuff, head over there and listen to that after you binge listen to all of our podcasts.
Yeah. And
you were on a podcast this week too.
I was, about a week ago. It came out almost exactly a week ago. I was on the Foul Front Waterfowl podcast, hosted by Ben Page.
Wait, you hunt waterfowl?
Rumor has it.
You hunt geese?
Yeah, I might.
Just check.
You should listen to that episode, Nephi, because we might have talked about that a little bit. And my rules for getting an invitation to hunt at a goose pit.
So
you might take a listen to that.
I like to argue more than I like to, So it's like, it's the same reason I love Luke Bryan.
Well, so oh my gosh, now we have to end this podcast right now.
Who's Luke Bryan?
It's bro country. It's an inside joke between Dave and I.
Oh my gosh.
He made some giant statement about how I couldn't listen to bro country. And so now, even though I didn't before, now out of principle, I love it.
That explains the GIF you put on a text message the other day. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. Okay. All of a sudden he's the biggest bro country fanatic. Outside of Southern Georgia.
That's what you get, Dave. You mess with the bull, you get the horn.
My gosh. It's just, I know, no offense. Actually, I was going to say no offense to anybody listening out there, but absolutely offense intended. If you like bro country, I don't even have any words. I don't have any words. No, that's it. I just don't have any words.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying you shouldn't you shouldn't be impeding on people's liberty to listen to and enjoy bro country. You should just let them have it. They love bro country.
They can have it. Just don't force it down my throat.
Nobody's trying.
So what's it?
Live and let live, baby. Live and let live.
What's it like to go on someone else's podcast? It's different than having to prepare stuff, huh?
Yeah.
You actually have to prepare more.
You actually have to prepare quite a bit.
Like,
turns out the Foul Front Waterfowl podcast is far more organized than we are, and really thinks ahead on how to prep their guests for being on the show. And I actually appreciated that.
Did you take some notes?
I appreciated the hand holding. It was kind of nice.
Well, Dave, maybe you could weigh in 30 minutes before the podcast about what we're going to talk about.
I'm just waiting for one of you guys to ask. And I will say this about both Nephi and myself, because obviously, and I would say it about Mike too, but he wasn't on one last week, except this one. I'm guessing, Nephi, and this was the case for me for sure, we don't talk about what we do for our day job on this podcast. But if you really want to find out what we do, you can go listen to Vortex Nation or Foul Front Waterfowl podcast, and I'm pretty sure you'll learn just exactly what it is we each do.
I'm downloading the one you were on, Dave, just because I'm curious on what it takes to get the invite.
I only have one rule. It's just one rule.
One rule? Okay. Don't ask.
It's more like what it takes to not get the invite.
I won't be listening to that podcast, just so we're clear.
Michael, I'm sure Mike will let you know. Anyway. Okay, topic number 2. And this one, we'll just run through this one pretty quickly. But we did an episode, 9-10 years ago before this pandemic started, or maybe last September, October timeframe. I don't know which. It's all about the same. It bleeds together. But we did an episode talking about the new acting director of the BLM.
He was temporary, though. He wasn't going to be there very long.
It was a temporary appointment of William Perry Pendley, and there were
gone by September.
I can't remember when. We might have said gone by September. Yeah. It might have been. It was a temporary appointment, and we had talked about at the time why folks, maybe there could have been a little bit of hyperbole around the nomination, and I know there a lot of nervousness in the hunting community about that nomination in particular, because of Mr. Pendley's background professionally for the prior 30 years, some of the cases he had taken on. And so we went through, if you want to listen to it, please do. When you're binge listening, check that one out. And we had made this prediction that'd be a short-term appointment. Well, I think he's been reappointed 3 or 4 more times.
Sorry.
He was just reappointed in early April. And this, what's interesting about this, and I'd be interested in you guys' thoughts on this. We were all wrong.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your thoughts on this, if there's a reason for this. This reappointment was only until May 5th. It was a 1-month reappointment.
You think there might be somebody in the wings that
we haven't talked about this. The 3 of us haven't talked about this at all. I'm just throwing this out there for discussion. I'm curious, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Like, why all of a sudden a 1 month? Just theories.
My theory is that there might be somebody else that they are trying to get prepped up for that, but that somebody else can't necessarily slide into the slot at the moment. So that's my theory. I'm just going to throw it out there. That's my guess.
I got nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to let Nephi be the only one to guess.
Yep,
No, I'm just kidding.
wrong.
I'm not
Hey,
gonna, no, I'm not. Actually, I agree with you, Nephi. That's what makes sense to me, is that maybe they have somebody that either they're thinking about formally nominating, or somebody else. No, somebody else that they're
sure?
considering. I'm 100%
What are you doing in May?
Probably still sitting in my house.
Okay, just checking.
But the other thing that came across my mind was, that maybe he feels like he's done what he came there to do.
I was just,
and that maybe there'll be somebody else appointed in a temporary capacity, starting then, or maybe they're just going month to month now. I don't know.
We'll say this on the temporary capacity stuff, and this is in all seriousness now, that there's, in some respects, this is a sign of the times that we live in. And so there are a lot of people that are poking the bear at the administration, being like, oh my gosh, how come all these temporary appointments, you guys are, there are all these jobs and we haven't got important people filling these jobs, and why are you dragging your feet and filling these important positions? And then when you propose a name to fill one of those positions, like, you can't get the name through. You can't, people are fighting it and slowing everything down. And so I believe it's partly a product of the current politics of the times, is you can't get a name actually through and considered. And so you just end up with all these temporary jobs being temporarily filled. And then one side gets mad and they're like, oh, we can't vet this guy because we can't get him in front of a committee to vet him. But the problem is, we can't get the names in front of the, you're not moving along fast enough for us to fill the seats. And so it's just really, it's a product of the times. I feel like this issue with all this temporary.
Remember when it used to be advice and consent? Advice and consent in Congress of the Senate for confirmation.
Now you want to bring everybody and grill anybody that's going to get any job. You want a chance to put them in front of a TV camera and hammer them for political means. And so frankly, it's disgusting.
Or delay to even bringing them in to hammer them, or not even bringing them in. So, and I don't want to cast stones at any particular party. Both parties are guilty of this. It just happens to be one party doing it right now. But both parties have been guilty of it in the past. But you're right, Nephi. There are literally dozens of nominations that have been sitting out there. And in fact, I'm going to get these numbers wrong. But Susan Combs, who's in the Secretary of Interior's office, she's an assistant secretary for policy and planning, or policy and I'm going to get the full title wrong. She was nominated, and it took how many days? I can't remember if it was just under a year or just over a year to get her nomination to go from nomination to confirmation. I think it was over a year to go from nomination to confirmation. She just announced that she's leaving the agency, and it's 9 months or so after being confirmed. But in fact, I know it was more than a year because she's been there for about 3 years, but only finally got confirmed 9 months ago. And so you might be right. It's what's the point of formally nominating somebody if you know that you're never actually going to get an up or down vote? I
will take a moment and let's get on to something else. But this is something, frankly, I mean, you look at the difference in state government, that we're familiar with, and then how this is occurring on the federal level right now. We had jobs that we needed to have filled in the executive branch in the state of Wyoming. And how did that work? Those jobs that had to be confirmed. And what you had is we provided the list, all the people who were going to go. And you know what? Everybody didn't get called up and get hammered. What you did is people would go through the list. They'd look at, and their specific number, I want to talk to A, Q, and, Z, these people. These are the people we're going to bring in and talk, and grill and talk with. Everybody else, we're going to move them on a consent list. They're going to take their job and they're just going to move forward. And you have to do that, especially when you have a government this big and this much stuff going on. You can't sit there and go over everybody with a fine tooth comb and hammer them about everything that they have ever done. You've got to just, at some level, have faith that people can do their jobs. So,
except for Dave Ross. I think it was probably pretty good that they brought him in and grilled him.
That guy. But I will tell you what, that guy can certainly write a brief. Dave Ross.
Yeah, just kidding. Actually, I think I told you I saw him in Reno a month and a half ago or so. Got to have lunch with him. Catch up. For folks that don't know, so Dave Ross is the what's his official title? He's an EPA. He's the administrator. He's the administrator of the water division of
Administrator for water
of the Environmental Protection Agency in DC.
EPA.
So he runs the water program for EPA. And we were out at the same conference. And ironically enough, he was my neighbor for a couple of years, lived 2 houses down from me, and we used to hang out on my front patio 2-3 nights a week in the summer.
Yeah, and you sold him a Jeep that was a piece of junk.
I did. I should show you the contract. I disclosed everything. It was like a William Perry Pendley disclosure list. It's 17 pages of disclosures about everything that I had to have fixed on my Jeep. Yeah. So he knew what he was getting.
So it'd have been a shorter list just to say what was original or what,
Yeah, exactly. Some original parts.
Yeah, right.
I think it's worth noting too that so he was your next door neighbor, and then he was I forget his title when he was at the Attorney General's office. What was it, Mike?
Senior Assistant Attorney General.
Yeah. He was one of Mike's underlings. Somebody just worked for Mike, basically.
No, he didn't work for me. He worked for Chris. Different section.
But I think the other thing that's interesting is how much I love waters of the U.S.
Yeah.
And so for people that don't know, Dave was our office's attorney. So he came over from the AG's office and worked with the governor's office when we were doing comments and litigating issues related to the waters of the U.S. rule. Dave was over with us. And so, very interesting, I think. And so then he moved on went to Wisconsin first, bounced over to Wisconsin, and then up to EPA. And so, yes, I think we all like us some Dave Ross. So if you don't like him, sorry, everybody. He's
I just like the fact that he was grilled.
I like it.
That's what I like.
He's a good dude.
No, he's a very good guy. Very good guy. Yeah. All right.
Terrible
so transitioning.
Terrible taste in automobiles and friendships.
Yeah, I can't argue with either.
But a great attorney.
Things. Actually, I'll tell you that I missed that Jeep every day. When he was moving and decided to sell that Jeep, I actually contemplated buying it back from him.
And your wife stopped you.
I had seller's remorse after selling.
Well, it was her Jeep. I mean,
it's true. It was my wife's Jeep. I barely fit in it, but it went everywhere. I had a moose in the back of that thing. It was amazing. Anyway, we should probably transition on to something else here. Though we could talk about Dave all night, I guess, but let's not do that.
All right. We'll have him on the podcast someday when he can actually do it.
All right. Yeah, that's true. Once he's done in his job, finished with his job, he can probably join us. All right. So the next topic. Last week in California, you've heard us talk on this podcast in the past about how through ballot initiative, mountain lion hunting was banned in California several decades ago. Well, it's now going another step farther in California, and I'm not weighing in on whether this is a good or bad thing. I don't know California. I don't know the biology of the species. I don't know California well enough to weigh in. What I can tell you is last week, the State Fish and Game Commission voted 5-0 to grant mountain lions in 6 different regions of the state, from San Francisco to San Diego, as candidates to be listed as threatened under the state of California's Endangered Species Act within the next year. So it goes candidate and then it could be formally listed as threatened within a year in these areas. To be clear, before we get into a little bit of discussion on this, to be crystal clear, this is not the Federal Endangered Species Act. This isn't a proposal to list them under the federal law. nearly every state has their own state Endangered Species Act. I think there are 48 of the 50 states have a state Endangered Species Act, and this is the state deciding that portions of this population need to be protected as threatened in the state of California. Now, here's what they said, and then I'll open this thing up for us here. Northern California, evidently, there are lions all over the place. I don't know if all over the place is right, but the state of California, the state biologists estimate that the mountain lion population in California is somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 animals in California. But the areas that are part of this vote, which actually make up, I believe, about a third of the geographic area of the state of California, the estimate is that there are between 225 and 510 lions in those parts of the states, and that they're facing increasing threats, not from hunting. Like people, I've heard arguments so many times about predator hunting in other states being something that is going to drive them to extinction. Well, there hasn't been predator hunting in California. There haven't been mountain lion hunting in California for decades. Here, it's humans building their mega mansions and having freeways, just urban development and freeways, causing genetic bottlenecks and vehicle strikes and just pushing these animals out of their range. It's like the Kardashians building a mansion right in the middle of a main, prime habitat for mountain lions. So that's where they are. It could have some impacts on people in California, landowners in particular. Right now, there are processes for landowners to be able to get depredation permits if mountain lions are killing their livestock. And in these areas, that could impact that. And that could have some significant negative impacts on the landowner community. Just wanted to make people aware that this is out there going on in California right now. So, thoughts?
Well,
no thoughts?
Many thoughts. And like California is a very challenging state, and it's a challenging state for hunting for a variety of reasons. People probably heard me talk about it. I talked about it on the Vortex podcast quite a bit. We were at recently at the North American, Dave, and we were talking with the director of the division there, and California is seeing plummeting numbers of hunters. So you want to know what's endangered in California? Like I say, plummeting numbers of hunters. A whole lot of Californians hunt. A whole lot of Californians. They don't hunt in California anymore. That's sad. Like they hunt in Idaho, they hunt in, Wyoming, they hunt in, Arkansas, and the state's feeling it. And when they look at their numbers and they have seen a precipitous and a linear decline and predictable in the numbers of people buying hunting licenses in California. And even California's conservation community, you've seen articles where they are acknowledging this as an existential threat to conservation in California because they recognize the importance of the dollars that sportsmen bring to conservation. And it's harder and harder there because while people who are in the know recognize the importance of sportsmen and their dollars and their efforts in preserving habitat and preserving species and in having a moderate in balancing different ecosystems, the fact is that most of the population in California does not recognize that. And what you have is a whole bunch of people who their perception of wildlife management is driven by movies, and it's driven by popularized accounts. It's driven by watching Call of the Wild, and that's how they think. That's what they think of wildlife management. That's their understanding of it. And so when you approach them with these types of things, it gets very difficult. And it doesn't help that in many states now, the commissions are being, our game and fish commissions are no longer that. They're wildlife commissions or something else. And they get populated with the same types of people who may not understand the importance of sportsmen. It's a problem, and it's a big challenge for California. And it's something that I don't know, how do you keep it from spreading? So, There you go. Okay.
So the one thing I'd say that's a little, so I don't disagree with about anything you said, Nephi, except the one thing I'd refocus it a little bit is acknowledging that since 1990, hunters haven't been able to pursue mountain lions in California, right? And so the Fish and Game Commission can't change that. It doesn't matter if all 5 of them are hunters and want to see them hunted. They don't have the legal authority to do that because you went through a ballot initiative. And we did an episode about some of the scary aspects of ballot initiatives that I would encourage people to listen to. And so we have a Fish and Game Commission that I don't know any of the people on the commission. I don't know the California Fish and Game Commission. I don't know if they hunt or they don't hunt. But even if they did hunt and wanted to hunt, they wouldn't be able to allow mountain lion hunting. And in this instance, they actually, what they're saying is, at least for a certain population of mountain lions, their numbers are so low that they actually warrant for not just no hunting, but they warrant additional protections as a threatened species.
So how I've never looked at California state's ESA. Is it similar to the federal, in that it's restrictive and there's going to be problems for further development and habitat?
Yeah. So, you know as well as I do that the state ESA can't be less restrictive, has to be, than the federal law. It has to be at least as restrictive. And in some ways, it's even my understanding, and there are some places where it's even more restrictive than the federal ESA. California is one of the most aggressive endangered species acts in the country.
So less mega mansions, maybe?
It'll be a lot harder to develop in those areas, I'm sure. And maybe they, without going through and getting, incidental take permit and having consultations and all sorts of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
It could impact development. It could impact where you could put highways. It could impact, agriculture producers, of all kinds, both livestock grazing and potentially crop, growing, traditional farming. So it has the potential to have pretty broad impact. I just don't know enough about the geographic distribution and what the land ownership patterns are like and what the industries are like in those places to really weigh in with an opinion right now. So I was just really bringing this up more to just present the information that, hey, this is something that just happened there, just as an FYI for folks. So I'm not going to pontificate much because I always am reluctant to weigh in on a decision when I know absolutely nothing about the underlying reasoning.
All right. Next topic.
Okay. Before the next topic, I will tell you 5 members on the commission, and 2 of them talk about, what they enjoy about being sports, fishing / hunting. I'm a sportsman type, and then the other 3 don't. So just interesting.
Okay.
There you go. Moving on.
All right. Next topic. This one has nothing to do with an animal that you hunt or fish, but it's an animal that we all see, and we've probably all seen at some point in our lives. And
I saw one the other day. It was on the front of my truck.
I would hope not yet.
We're talking about something different. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm talking about monarch butterflies. So, why am I talking about monarch butterflies? That has nothing to do with hunting or fishing. Well, monarch butterflies are what's known as a candidate species. So they are. There was a petition years ago to list them under the Federal Endangered Species Act. So now we're pivoting from talking about the State of California State Act, and we're now talking about the federal law that applies nationwide. Endangered Species Act, which, by the way, we did a number of episodes on that. Go back and listen to those when you're binge listening to your
so boring.
Right?
You weren't there.
Anyway, so monarch butterflies were petitioned for listing under the federal act, and they did their 90-day finding that they're required to do, and it was substantive, and they actually they're to the point now in the process. I just don't want to get into I'm just not going to spend a lot of time in the weeds here on this one, but they're at the point now in the process where the service U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has agreed to make an up or down listing determination. As far as, yep, we're going to list them as threatened or endangered, or no, we're not going to list them at all. They're not warranted by the end of calendar year 2020. So this year, by the end of this year, they're going to make a decision on whether or not to list monarch butterflies as threatened. And you should know that in the Western, there are two major populations of monarch butterflies, the Western population and the Eastern population. And you're not going to take a line and run it right down the middle of the country to divide those. You're going to run a line, and the Western population is really going to be Oregon, Washington, California. The Western population really means that extreme West. The Eastern population, everything else. Everything else is the Eastern population. That Western population since the mid-1980s has declined roughly 99%. It's struggling pretty badly. That Eastern population has had a general downward trend, but has had a lot more fluctuation. Last year had a really big upward spike in population. And they're everywhere. Monarch butterflies are everywhere as far as geographic distribution. They're just all over the place, and they're migratory. So they run from, parts of Canada all the way down to where they overwinter in Mexico, outside of Mexico City on a number of high mountaintops in Mexico City. So a listing here of monarch butterflies could have pretty profound impacts on anything and everything you can possibly contemplate from a development standpoint all over the country. So what happened recently with monarch butterfly? What happened during this pandemic? Well, last week, I think it was last week, it might have been the week before, but it's been relatively recently. The Fish and Wildlife Service released a nationwide candidate conservation agreement with assurances on energy and transportation lands. What does that mean? A candidate conservation agreement with assurances, without diving into the weeds and boring everybody with all of the details, although I think they're fascinating.
CCAA, for those people who want to have a good acronym for the future. CCAA.
Sure. It basically, all it means is that that folks in the energy industry and the transportation industry can enter into these agreements with the Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and agree to do certain conservation measures. They can agree to do certain things, implement certain practices that will benefit the monarch butterfly from a conservation standpoint.
And in return,
if they agree to do those and do those, if the service lists the monarch butterfly as threatened or endangered, they, as long as they're working within that agreement, they will not be asked to do anything more. So think of it as like an insurance policy.
Yep. You just say I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. And the service says, okay, if you do A, B, C, and D, that's good enough. And then when they list the thing, you don't have to do anything other than A, B, C, and D. You're already doing the things you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, you got it. And that's a pretty significant, that's a pretty powerful tool. And it's a pretty significant incentive to get people to agree to do some on the ground conservation to help recover a species that at the time you enter into it, it's not listed. You only enter into these agreements when they're not a listed species. That's what in their name, they're a candidate species. Yep. But so you're not required to do anything. They're not listed. You could continue business as usual. But if you don't enter into this agreement when they list them, what you're asked to do may be a lot more onerous than what you're asked to do before they're listed.
Yep. And I think a lot of people miss that about the Endangered Species Act. They think that, hey, why would you implement these best management practices or enter into agreements or cost share, anything like that before they're listed? Well, the reality is once a species is listed, like everybody's hands are tied. Like we don't, for example, if somebody's going to do a cost share agreement for sage grouse habitat, to help you do, avoid, harming sage grouse. If that bird were to get listed, and you didn't have an agreement in place, we don't pay people to not break the law. When there's a law, you don't get to break the law. You don't get incentivized to not break the law. You just don't break the law. And that's where these agreements come into place. Is like before the species is listed, you actually have an opportunity to, find some collaborative way to make this thing work for you and for the species. Where if you just say, I don't care about the species, let whatever happen to it. Boom, that species gets listed. All of a sudden, the Endangered Species Act is a whole lot harder to work through if you didn't do something on the front end. Am I accurate, Dave?
Yeah. Oh no, you're spot on. The other thing that comes with this is what's called an incidental take permit. So you agree to do certain practices and you accidentally kill butterflies because you're doing your business, right? You're working, you're in an energy business and you accidentally kill a butterfly. Well, with your truck or whatever, you're protected from prosecution for killing a threatened or endangered species. You're protected against that because you've entered into the CCAA that says, as long as I'm operating within the terms of this CCAA, and it's not like you can just go out there and willy-nilly just stomp the hell out of these butterflies, right? but it's like if I accidentally kill them,
that you're normally undertaking result in an incidental take,
right? Then
so sorry, it was an accident, but
right.
We've
then
already
you're not going to be
this,
prosecuted.
Yeah, we've got the CCAA that says I can do these things. We already made that. Dave, you're holding your iPhone up above.
Oh, sorry,
I'm
just
weird.
Reading. I'm sorry, I'm reading something. But the one thing I also would mention about this is the significance of something like this. When I told you at the beginning, introducing this particular topic, that this butterfly is literally found across the entirety of the lower 48 state. I mean, it's pretty much found everywhere. There are places where it's not, but it's largely everywhere. We're talking about a huge nationwide multi-state plan, including dozens of companies in the energy and transportation sectors, private landowners. This is, I don't want to say unprecedented because we're starting to see some pretty massive conservation deals going on out there for different species. But this is a pretty significant one, and it's probably worth watching to see if something like this can work. If all these people can come together and put these agreements in place that put actions in place on the ground that either prevent the need to list the monarch butterfly in the first place, which is really the point of these CCAAs, is to try and prevent the need to list a species. But if it does get listed, that it's putting good conservation on the ground that moves it towards recovery and delisting and makes people have some certainty and predictability when operating under the act that they might not otherwise have. And to do it on this scale is pretty impressive. And so I just wanted to highlight that's a pretty monumental task, bringing in people from all over the country to come to an agreement on how this type of CCAA should look and can work for everybody across the country. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen that often.
Mike?
Mike,
you look so bored.
No, I couldn't tell if he was bored or just primed to jump in.
Well, yeah, it just got me thinking that if they have a deadline by the end of the year to come to an up or down decision, and they're trying to get a lot of these CCAAs done in a large swath of the country, that's going to be a lot of focus by one agency on that one task. And so just sort of, there's going to be some trade-offs because there's only so many people working there. And so it'll be interesting to see, how much manpower they can put towards this effort and what it means for all the other efforts that they're going on and trying to work on also.
Mike can't stop himself from the legal strategery.
Well, and if you're going down that road, I will mention, just for the wonky people listening, right? Which I'm assuming is just about
anybody that's still listening.
Yeah. They have to make a listing decision by the end of the year, but that listing decision won't go into effect for another 12 months after that. So they can continue to enroll under the CCAA until the final listing rule is published about a year later. So they have a little bit more than this year to.
So a proposed rule by the end of the year.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know this, But the best management practices and the stuff in the CCAA for monarch butterfly that, hopefully people are looking is going to be help it. Is that also going to help other pollinators?
It can't help but help other pollinators. Yeah.
So now for those of you who really want to wonk out, go look up the challenges that pollinators face now. There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a podcast all to its own there.
And there's nothing we would rather do than do a podcast on pollinators because we've already done ones on birds. See,
did we do one on birds?
Yeah, birds.
Birds aren't real? Is that what it is?
Raptors? Didn't we do status of the birds?
I don't know. We've touched.
Because then we could do the birds and the bees.
There
Dun,
it is.
dun, dun.
That was.
Told you, dad jokes. I've got more.
Yeah, are they that good? Because I sure hope so. All right, here's the last thing.
Sorry. It's very late at night. For people who don't know, because we all have real jobs, these podcasts are usually done after the rest of our families are asleep and when our wives can't hear the ridiculous things that we say.
All right, last topic.
Okay.
Ready for it? And this one will be pretty quick.
And Mike is drinking heavily. That's why he talks less and less. And
he's got like that Jello neck head bob going on, just fading in and out. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Next topic. This is more of a reminder topic for people. And we mentioned it at the very beginning of this, that the landscape of what you can and cannot do right now.
We should have opened with this.
I opened with this a little bit, but we didn't.
Well, we should have talked about it more during the pandemic. The ridiculousness of how fast everything is whipping around about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's just it. It's like every day some state is opening or closing and then reopening because of public pressure or, something related to hunting and fishing.
Yes.
And then you have the camping, and then you have can I even travel into the state without quarantining first? There's just.
Let's just answer that with a no. In general, you can't.
Yeah.
Or I don't know where you want to go.
Yeah, pretty much just doing it local, hunt locally.
Yeah.
Right now.
Well, yeah, unless you're coming in for business.
In which case,
if you're getting paid to hunt and fish, and you can say this is a business trip, man, more power to you. And write us at your mountain at yourmountain.com, and I'd like to send you my resume.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you could use an assistant. But the reason I bring this up is I know there are turkey seasons going on all over the country right now. There are black bear hunts going on
all over the country.
Yeah, or not going on. There's fishing going on or not going on all over the country. And it's just really, really important right now that we obviously want to get out into the outdoors, and we want you all to be able to get out into the outdoors. But it's just really, really important right now that, one, you stay local, because most places you really can't even cross state lines without quarantining first, or maybe even come back into your own state without then quarantining again. Now you've lost a month. And so go local as much as possible, and then check with your fish and game or game and fish agencies and find out what can I do? How has it impacted the seasons here? And then, I think it's even worth thinking about if you can't get out because for some reason your state has closed it down. Start thinking to the fall. Just start thinking, what can I do to prep myself for being ready to get after it this fall? That's what I'm using as a little bit of motivation. It's like I'm applying for licenses right now. I'm like putting together my physical fitness routine. Like, how am I going to get myself in shape for the fall? Like, I see Nephi.
Have you started it yet?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were just saying you were so bored with this conversation that I assumed you were.
I was just sitting here pointing at my own head, and it wasn't intentional at all.
I think it was Very intentional.
It wasn't. It literally was not.
You were literally putting a gun to your own head when I was talking.
Yes. Well, actually, it's a finger. Just so everyone knows that it's not literally putting a gun to my head. Like, I just want to be clear about that because that would be irresponsible. I would not do that. It's important to do. People need to check into it. I am going to piggyback on what you said though and say something. I'm going to tell a story and then ask people to go do something, that Dave will have a very hard time with, but that everybody should do anyway. So there's a local business here, Dad's Donuts. You guys familiar with this story?
Oh yeah, I saw that story. That's a cool story.
Yep. Yeah, we bought 6 dozen donuts.
Yeah, man. We sat in line for about an hour and a half today to buy a few donuts for breakfast. But here's the thing. So there's this local company that's been doing a ton to try and help people out. Been, bringing the first responders donuts, taking them to the hospital and things like that. And they said this on Facebook, so I don't need to be coy about it. I wouldn't have mentioned their names otherwise, but they went, like so many businesses now, they're having issues with, making everything pencil out. And so they went and tried to utilize the small business program and the loans that were available, and the money was already gone, and they qualified and everything was good. And so suddenly you have a small business that, was going to have trouble making payroll, and they were going to be done. And when people found out in this community, everybody in Cheyenne decided it was time to have donuts, for whether it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever. But they went out and did something awesome, which is they patronized the business, and they went out and this, this guy came out the next day and says like, hey, I did it. You guys did it for me. I mean, he was very emotional about it. Here's why I bring it up. Dad's Donuts and how it affects you. If you're one of those people, like, if we have absolute empathy and we're sorry. And like, everybody who's listening ought to feel like us and try and do what we can to help people who can't go to work right now, who don't have a paycheck coming in right now. And we know it's a huge chunk of people in this country. If you're one of those people that's lucky enough where you got to be like us and sit around the house and work from home and make jokes about it, you know what? Buy some gear. Buy a new pair of boots. Buy a pack. Buy a tag. Buy some ammo. Plan a hunt. Invest some money in these businesses, because these clothing businesses that nobody's buying hats right now, nobody's buying gloves, nobody's buying these things that, there are people that work there. And as a country, the toughest part about this whole pandemic thing, I think everybody's going to realize we've done a pretty dang good job of, the whole flattening the curve thing. We really have to help each other pull out of the economic challenges of it. And part of that is pretty easy to do. And it's going to be harder for Dave than it is for me, but it's going to be open your wallet and go spend at your local businesses and buy a pizza. And even if you have to go pick it up instead of being able to eat in a restaurant, support some of the people that, have really been hurt by this. And most of those people aren't asking for anything other than, hey, come utilize my business. So that's my thing, is like, you care about the outdoors, find a nice outdoor business and get yourself a new set of camo or something.
That'd be me. I just did.
And you'd say it'd be hard for me, but Nephi, in this instance, you're wrong, and you're absolutely right. It's not hard for me, but you're absolutely right that it's what we should be doing, and we have been doing that as much as we can.
And I'm joking.
No, I know you are.
With you about being a cheapskate in this situation.
I know you are. Yeah, I'm going to tell you one other thing. This is something I'm considering doing in the state of Wyoming. This is going to sound, Mike knows it because he got an email about it from me. So once I start saying this, he'll know where I'm going. The first lady of our state of the state of Wyoming, as her initiative, as the first lady started this hunger initiative so nobody goes hungry. And she's trying to partner with people, different organizations from all over the state. And one of the places she's trying to partner is with folks in the hunting community that can help provide wild meat, wild game, to families in need, right? To figure out a way so that families don't go hungry. At the same time she's doing this, we talk about these agencies ending their hunting seasons, not having hunting seasons, people being afraid to travel from out of state or not being able to travel from out of state. Out of state license sales, this is a dirty little secret that people don't like to talk about because they're so protective of our own state interests and our own, being able to hunt in our own state. But for most states, it's those non-resident tags that make up most of the license sale revenue for the state agency that go back to managing wildlife. I anticipate that a lot of these state agencies around the country might actually see a decline in revenue this year. Maybe people can't afford to take the hunts that they were planning on taking now because they've lost their jobs. Right now, people aren't able to travel into other states to do hunts. And so there are things that as residents we can do. And in Wyoming, we're absolutely blessed beyond measure from a wild game perspective. And so I looked at this and I thought, I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And actually, I can kill 15 big game animals with 15 licenses. And so, I mean, what I'm looking at, and I don't know if I'll be able to accomplish this, but what I am hoping to do is with elk, deer, and antelope, buying the maximum tags possible, which is generally speaking 15. That's actually not the maximum because we have a couple of areas in the state for white-tailed deer does that you can buy unlimited tags. So you could just buy as many as you want. But I'm going to use the baseline of 15. 3 elk, 6 deer, 6 antelope. I'm going to try and buy 15 tags. I'm not saying I'm going to fill them, but it's going to be my contribution to the Game and Fish Department. And then I'm going to fill as many as I can. And I'm going to donate as much of it as I can to the First Lady's Hunger Initiative, because I think this year more than any, that initiative is going to be so valuable, so critical. And it's self-serving in some ways because I just love hunting.
You're going to have to buy some replacement blades for that Avalon.
Yeah, well, at least your kids got to see it.
That's a lot of work.
At least your kids got to see you during quarantine, right? So
yeah, right.
Well, and oh, hey, look, I have children. You're talking about how great it is to finally, get to spend some time with your kids. At least, hey, you always have this time that you're able to spend with them. So now that they won't see you for the rest of the year, at least you put in your month.
My oldest and Mike's oldest are old enough to big game hunt this year. So I might buy 30 tags. Back in school. Dave's planning on homeschooling all the time. I was like, we're done with school. We're just hunting, bro. They're going to learn so much more being out in the field with me than they'd learn in any classroom.
You're just hoping this whole thing holds out. You're like, this is perfect. You're the teacher. Like, you don't have to care about school.
Your story might be better than mine, Nephi, but my point is still valid, right? And what I'm trying to do is really highlight the hunger initiative and the fact that you're going to have declining revenues at a state agency, and there's an opportunity to do both.
Dave, you are 100% right, and this is critical for people to understand. People talk about like all this other money that comes in, for example, Pittman Robertson dollars. Think about this: let's be honest. There's going to be a huge slug of Pittman Robertson dollars that are going to be available to these agencies. Firearm sales have been 200% of normal. Firearms and ammunition, it's going gangbusters. But guess what? That money doesn't do any good to state agencies if they can't match it. If those PR dollars, if they don't have money coming in the other side of the house to be able to match those PR dollars, they go back to the Treasury. They're useless to states. And so if you don't have license sales, if you don't have new hunters, if you don't have people coming through the door of Game and Fish being able to provide that needed match, it's all wasted. And that's the unique thing about that federal state partnership is both sides have to be functioning correctly in order to get maximum dollars on the ground. And so, you got to get out there. You got to get people involved in the sport. And honestly, if it's not going to come from out of state, you got to, I would say this. I'm going to say this. don't not buy your out-of-state tag. If you were going to go hunt in Idaho, plan that hunt, book that hunt, buy that tag. Don't not do it. If you don't do it, you're going to regret it because things are going to get better. And if you back out now from going on those, from being part of the solution to the economic issue, it's going to be a compounding problem. States can't make up the difference. Dave and I can buy all the tags we want. Honestly, me, Dave, and Mike, we are not going to make up for the revenue that will be lost by the 4 guys from Wisconsin who don't come here to hunt elk.
Oh my goodness. If I buy all 15 tags I'm talking about, I have to actually pencil it out. I'm just doing it quick in my head, but it might not be as much as, in fact, I'm certain it's not as much as one non-resident moose license. So
Ruben, Jimmy, Mark, Vortex, you guys load them up. Wisconsin, we'll show you where to go. We'll share. We'll send you to Dave's spot.
But also, if you are coming in, if you are going to come in from out of state, so just to wrap a bow around this thing before we close this out for the night. If you are going to come from another state, like Nephi said, buy that tag. And if you do come out here and you come to Wyoming and you get an animal, I know it's really hard to part with that meat. But if you can part with a little bit of it and you can support First Lady Gordon's hunger initiative by donating some of that meat, please do. That'd be amazing. We got a lot of people struggling in this state right now. And it's not just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And when this is over and the state opens back up, we're still going to have a lot of people without jobs that are going to need, help from anybody that's willing to step up. And this is one place where we can help. Food is that's a basic necessity. This is one thing where the hunting community can step up and help out neighbors, whether they're in your state or not. So that's my ask ahead of time.
All right. I hadn't done the math on 15 for my kid too.
I hadn't either.
we were thinking more like lifetime, license. It'd be the right time to get that, and that would dump in on that side.
Yeah, well,
I look at it. 15's a lot, but reduced price antelope, reduced price deer, those aren't that expensive.
No, I think it's going to need that conservation stamp anyway. So might as well get the lifetime one.
Right. Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there, Mike. I don't want to have to cut up that many animals by myself.
I understand. And you've helped me and I appreciate it. So yeah. Okay.
All right. So I can count on you. Nephi, you in? I'll let you hunt geese.
I'm in.
One time.
One goose.
All right. Either you guys have anything else you want to cover tonight?
No, I think,
I think it's a good place to wrap it up.
All right. Perfect. Well, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in, for listening to us this week. I know you're getting pulled in a million directions right now. Lots of things going on, homeschooling kids, trying to work from home. If you're still working, all sorts of stuff. Nephi, what do you got?
You get CLE credits for listening to some episodes of the Your Mountain podcast. So if you want your kids to be an attorney someday, sit the kids down. Nothing's more educational than binge listening to Your Mountain podcast for children.
I think that gets us to about 12 mentions of binge listening to the podcast, and I think that's a great way to.
And there's no better way for them to visit with their friends than to give them all their own iPhone, and then they can all download it on their own iPhone. And
they can go to our website, itsyourmountain.com,
and download it on their own laptop.
I was going to suggest going to the banner on the top that says store.
Buy them all.
And go on, buy them t-shirts, buy them a cover for that iPhone, buy them a case for that iPhone, Your Mountain case for that iPhone.
If you loved your children, you would.
Yeah. All of my kids have Your Mountain t-shirts. Do yours? I'm not posing that to you, Mike or Nephi. I'm posing that to everybody listening.
It's good. I was going to have to, it It was hurtful almost. It was so introspective.
No, it was directed at everybody else. Because as you said, Nephi, if you can support a local business or small business, which we're about as small of a business as you can get.
If by no business, you mean small business, then yes.
Then you can get out there and support our small/no business and buy some t-shirts or mugs or buy yourself an iPhone case, Your Mountain.
You know what I always say? Listen to the Your Mountain podcast, but it's cut because it's not the On Gravel podcast.
I know that's what you say. Yeah.
That's what I always say. And I'll leave it with that. That's my final thought.
You know what I always say? I always say life is about experiences, so go have one.